Hi, this is Joe. Just a quick little video on grain filling, specifically grain filling veneer or porous materials that you want to clear coat natural in your final finish. Basically what I'm using is I'm using a shellac product, a bullseye shellac right off the shelf, store-bought. I am using for my supplies mineral spirits, denatured alcohol, and some Super T Hot Stuff CA glue right there, which comes in handy, and some painter's tape. Now, approaching this project, this is my guitar project that I've been working on. I have a Bubinga veneer, which is very thin, and Bubinga by nature is very porous and very brittle. So what happened was when I applied the veneer to the mahogany base, I let it sit for a while, and it actually moved a little bit, and it developed some checks and some cracks in it. So I decided to let it sit for a while and let it be and let it do what it wants to do before I finished it. What I'm showing you is my method on how I'm grain filling my top. What I'm going for basically is a mirror finish for the final finish of the guitar, and to achieve that, obviously I couldn't go with any traditional grain filler. For example, this right here, this water-based grain filler is a mahogany pigment. It's great, you know, but it does not apply to this project at hand because I want to clear coat this. This is actually a book-matched veneer, and I don't want to hide the grain, obviously, so I want a natural finish. However, on the back, I do want to hide the grain because I'm actually going to paint it a solid color. So that requires a different technique and a different product to use. But what I've done basically is, first off, I used the Super T Hot Stuff CA glue to fill in any dings, any cracks, any checks, and a few applications may be needed depending on how deep it is. This stuff is very hard to sand, so you want as little squeeze out as possible. You don't want any excess. Basically, you want to flood it, get it to the surface, and you know, if it needs another application, then by all means do another application. But you don't really want to create a huge mound. You're just creating more work for yourself. So basically, if it needs a few applications, by all means do that, and it works great. It dries clear, and it's hardly even noticeable in the when you put shellac on it. It's almost visible. You can't even see it. Other methods, I guess, would be to use epoxy, which provides a little structural integrity to it. Again, that, you know, depending on the product you use, you know, something that dries clear that doesn't show up in the final finish. So this is definitely a must in this application that I'm using. And a little word of advice: the tip, when you cut the tip off, you want to cut it as close to the top as possible. You don't want a lot coming out at one time. So basically, you know, I tried to get it as close as possible, and basically, you know, I didn't even have to squeeze it. Just hold it and let gravity take its place and just dab it in the spot where you're trying to fill. So that's one step I used. I used the CA glue. The next step would be the shellac, which is a store-bought item right off the shelf, and I did a few applications of that on the body. And what you do is basically you sand it with a 220 grit in between coats, and the shellac basically dries really quick, within 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the humidity, you know, and the dryness of the air that you're working in. So, but what I found is I have right now, currently, I have about 12 coats of shellac on the guitar top right now, and it looks a little you know, it looks a little funky right now. But what I'm basically looking for is an absolute flat surface, and I want to get rid of any bumps, any little valleys, any cracks, any checks. I already took care of the checks and the cracks and the little dings. So my next step would be to use the bullseye shellac. Basically, I applied a few applications, like I said, and sanding in between. I used basically what you want to do is sand down to bare wood. Each application, you sand down to bare wood, and what you're looking for is shiny spots. When you sand down to bare wood, it's going to get dull again, and any shiny spots are your low points of the piece you're working on. It'll highlight any dings, any scratches, any checks, any cracks. So the shiny portions of your surface would be the low points of your piece that you're working on. So that's a good indication of what to look for. Basically, I have about 12 applications of shellac on this guitar right now, on the top anyway, and I like the results. You know, it's nice and flat to the touch. It's nice and smooth. What you want to do is work in a place that has a lot of light, preferably sunlight, natural sunlight, which shows all imperfections. But you know, if you work with regular halogen lights, that'll work too. But you just want to make sure it's well lit. And what I like to do is I like to use mineral spirits to wash off the you know, the dust from the sanding, and it'll highlight basically anything that I missed, any imperfections. But as you can see, I'm looking for that reflection. And basically, this is prep work for the final finishing. This isn't the final finish. You know, I'm just looking to get a flat surface. I'm just looking to fill in the grain so I can have a mirror finish at the end of it. I want absolute flatness. As you can see there's some good reflection. There's no light distortion, no reflection distortion. That's what I'm looking for. Alright, now for the back, I'm using a different application and a different product altogether. I'm using this water-based grain filler. It's mahogany pigment. I've used this stuff before. It's great. It goes on like thick paint. You can use a paintbrush, or you can use a scraper, but I prefer a paintbrush. And basically, I flooded the back of this guitar with it because it's going to be a one solid color paint for the final application, and I didn't want any grain to show. So basically I filled in the grain with it, then sanded it, and then I went over it again with another coat and sanded it smooth, and it's a nice smooth finish to receive my primer. But that's basically it with the grain filling. I mean, you know, this stuff works great. I've used it on another project. It kind of has the consistency of drywall compound. When you sand it, it comes off really easy. So I would recommend it. Comes in a few different pigments. Also, you can buy it in a neutral color and mix in your own pigment. So yeah, so that's my spiel on grain filling. It's not as difficult as people may think it is. It's just a lot of work, a lot of steps involved. So I think if you take your time and follow your steps, I think you can work your way through it. Talk to you later.